Hi there, Mikhail. Great to see these great new essays. Let's get straight into your corrections and see what you've written. Traditional schooling is out of date, boring, and stifles a child's natural talents. Various professionals have pushed for an education revolution. Are there alternatives in the educational system? Is traditional education doing more harm than good? Let's see what you wrote. The issue of whether the school system is obsolete and needs, because it's the issue, needs to be shifted or not, has grown in importance over the last years. However, I am convinced a traditional education system is worth to use. Okay, I am convinced that the traditional education system is worth using. The word worth and worthwhile and kind of all of its different formations are a little complicated. I'm glad that you've tried to use it. But I would definitely recommend looking up in a search engine the different forms of this word and the syntax used with it. So here you want is worth using. So even though there are many alternative options nowadays, this essay will discuss supportive arguments for this point using statistics and data from the UK Education Department. Lovely. Okay, so let's move on. Firstly, conventional teaching system. The conventional, because it's one specific one. The conventional teaching system is based on proven methods which are essential for children's, plural, not plural, apostrophe S, even today, not currently. So are essential for children's education even today. This is because this system provides vital knowledge which suits, with an S, each child and gives him or her fundamental notions of the world for further development without an A. For example, recent research by Harvard has shown that current education fits 95% of pupils' needs in such crucial subjects as mathematics, physics, and world literature. Thus, being taught according to traditional postulates is important to nurture children's ability to acquire knowledge with the proper way. Maybe in the proper way would be better, but on the whole, it's fine. It's lovely. Okay? Secondly, there are plenty of schooling options for children to choose in order to satisfy the most demanding parents. Private schools, home education, centers for gifted students, and centers for gifted students are all aimed at providing the variety of alternative possibilities for improving pupils' talents and innate abilities. Some of them work with arts and music, whereas others open a science potential of a child. Well, the science potential, or maybe even the scientific potential of a child would even be more natural sounding in English. For instance, according to the data from the UK Education Department, 20% of all students in the country chose non-government schools to enroll in 2017. Therefore, those parents who consider their children bright, consider somebody something, or even genius, I would avoid this because genius isn't an adjective. You could say here instead, this would be really good if you had said, who consider their children bright or even gifted. Okay? Gifted would be a great word here. Can select the most appropriate place to obtain more specific and profound knowledge. Okay, very nicely done. To conclude, from the examples and arguments given, I believe that the traditional school system does many more positive things than negative ones, and you don't need rather. So let me try again and show you how this should be read, how this should read actually. To conclude from the examples and arguments given, I believe that the traditional school system does many more positive things than negative ones. Only if parents want to develop their children in a certain way can they let them study in a variety of educational private centers which are widely spread nowadays. Now, you may remember that I absolutely love inversion. It's one of my favorite grammatical structures, especially among the advanced grammatical structures. I'm not really convinced that it fits here appropriately, though. You could have done it without the it only and say, if parents want their children to develop a certain way, they should let them study in a variety of educational private centers. So the only doesn't seem to fit here. And of course, if you don't use only, then it shouldn't have inversion. But in general, Mikhail, it's a great essay. It's really very nice. So let's go on to your letter, the formal letter of complaint to the restaurant. Dear Sir, Madam, careful here with your typing. I am writing to, complain about the service that my wife and we always put the other person first and then ourselves. So about the service my wife and I received. You received service, okay? That's a collocation here. In your restaurant 2 days ago. There are 2 awful things to tell you about, which should be tackled immediately without the and. Okay, firstly, could you please explain why all of your dishes smelled, it was in the past, it was 2 days ago, like they were cooked with machine oil? Okay, now, one of the things that I want to remind you about, Mikhail, is that this is a formal letter. And one of the things that we do in formal letters and in formal communication in general is we try to be indirect. Okay, we try to remove the message. We try to remove the language of the message as much as possible. What do I mean? In other words, you don't want to ask a direct question in a formal letter. The other thing that I want to mention is that this is a little insulting. They smelled like they were cooked with machine oil. Now, I'm sure that if you're writing a letter of complaint, you're probably angry. But a formal letter, and certainly not a formal letter for IELTS, they are not the place where you should kind of vent your anger. So let's rewrite the sentence so that it does exactly what we want to do. It expresses our dissatisfaction, but in a way that is polite and formal. So what I would like instead is something like, firstly, I would like to inform you that the odor of the dishes was really quite unsatisfactory and certainly was not as advertised. I had read that you cook all of your dishes in pure olive oil, virgin olive oil, and this is clearly not the case. Okay, so it's really the same thing, but it's not as direct as what you wrote. Okay? Then, moreover, as for me, all products were not fresh and had already gone off 1 week prior. Now, you need 1 week prior because you're already talking about the past, and so you need to refer to a past that is further in the past than this. As a result, I suffered a stomach ache yesterday. You don't need because of this, because this does the same job, as a result. So as a result, I suffered a stomach ache yesterday and had to visit a doctor in a hospital. Secondly, again, you have a direct question here, so let's change it. You wrote, would you mind telling me how often your personnel washes the floor in the main hall? So let's make this an indirect question to make it a little more polite and less insulting. So, secondly, it is my impression that the floor needs to be washed a little more frequently. Okay? And again, this is a little too harsh. I suppose the last washing was last year or maybe earlier. So if you had changed it to something like what I said, it's less offensive, but it still gets your message across. And then you could say instead here, you should be aware that the floor looked filthy and it negatively predisposes your patrons to the state of the restaurant. So you can see that this kind of language is more formal, it gets the message across, but it doesn't offend anybody, because when people are offended in English, then they kind of, shut down and don't really respond to what we want them to do. So, I nearly fell slipping on a sticky red substance. Now, this has to do with the order of adjectives. So, do look online to find the correct order of adjectives. It's really rather important, even though it might not seem so. To summarize, it would be better to sue you but I am going to suggest to you another option. I would like you to make a full refund within a week. Furthermore, as I am a famous food critic, I can literally close your restaurant. However, if you manage all issues I have described above, I will write nothing bad about your restaurant. Okay, now, Mikhail, it's nicely written. It's correct. It's accurate. But I would prefer that you weren't so direct in the actual IELTS test if you had to write a formal letter of complaint. So let's kind of soften the language here a little bit. I mean, this sounds very threatening. So let's just kind of make it a little milder and say, furthermore, I would like to remind you that I am a famous food critic, and it would be a shame if I had to write a negative review about your restaurant. Please, please see to all the issues I have mentioned above, so that readers of my newspaper can receive a favorable review of your restaurant. So you can see how this is less direct, it's less threatening, and not really offensive to anybody. So I hope you take these suggestions under consideration. Of course, add the mistakes to your error correction list, correct these essays, and send them back along with your next ones. So I will await your next essays, looking forward to them, and until then, good luck writing.